They said I was a miracle baby. I was conceived despite a 99% effective IUD. Then I survived the miscarriage of my twin. After that, survived a series of medical treatments that should have aborted me. No one knew that Mom was still pregnant. It was a world before ultrasound, a world of hippies, Elvis, psychedelic drugs, and Vatican II. Why am I telling you this? Because I believe this film is the reason I was born. After years of research and 2 other related films, I've come across shocking discoveries that help explain today's cultural chaos. And it finds its basis in mysticism. Mystics claim that all wisdom comes from inside you, that you're already God, a so-called spark of divinity, an immortal soul, that altered states of consciousness reveal true reality. That everything is one, and all religions lead to the same place.
God is manifesting himself in all the religions in some way and in different ways.
Yes.
And so we can transcend the intensity of the different interpretations by the experience of the oneness that comes through contemplative prayer.
Today, many universities offer courses in the Christianized form of mysticism called spiritual formation. Businesses and schools sponsor mindfulness meditation. Several U.S. states and Australia recently legalized various types of psychedelic drugs, while the U.S. government is funding its research. Science and religion are merging, reviving the ancient pagan belief system called shamanism.
The ayahuasca is usually described as a grandmother spirit, and I met her.
You know, our ancestors are out there. Right. And if you're open, we could use that.
Christ is not an individual. Christ is a collective.
Is man really immortal? Was Jesus just a man? If everyone experiences their own inner truth, then who makes the rules?
There's nothing to believe. You just go and you know it to be true for yourself.
Where did mysticism come from? And where is it taking us?
Saints of all religions, we bow to you all.
In a world of half-truths and beautiful lies, this may be the most important information you've ever heard. Stephanie was an ER nurse, and though she was raised in a Christian home, her faith was dead. In her late 20s, she found out from a non-family member who her real biological father was, and it seemed that everyone else in her childhood town knew, except Stephanie. She'd been lied to. Disillusioned and angry, she wanted nothing more to do with religion. Two years later, her beloved grandpa was dying and asked her to pray for him.
And I was ashamed that I couldn't give him what he was needing. And I was the closest to him. It broke my heart.
On top of feeling lost, she was also going through a breakup. The hospital chaplain somehow knew that she was struggling. She needed help. He invited her to meet with him.
And he was able to identify exactly what was happening with me, and I had not shared with him. It was at that time that I was in need of spiritual support, extra spiritual support. I felt very alone, and I was struggling.
Here, she learned about contemplative prayer and related practices for the first time.
One of the books that came recommended right away was Thomas Keating's book on centering prayer. And as the sound dissipates, so do your thoughts. It's really encouraged to just have one word, whether it be Jesus or God or whatever it is to that person, and it's just repeated until your mind goes blank. It's a form of self-hypnosis. And so from Thomas Keating, I learned how to go into the silence, how to banish the thoughts from my mind and go into that stillness and just be present with God. I was an emergency room nurse in a level 1 trauma center, so my life was totally consumed with chaos and craziness and noise and trauma and adrenaline. It was such a draw for me because it was the anti-type. It was the anti-adrenaline, the anti-chaos. It was very, like I said, peaceful and compelling, and it's just like your mind goes flat. Those brain waves just feel like they go flat. You're soaking in all that it has. You crave that time.
Stephanie pursued a deeper experience in contemplative prayer by going on weekend spiritual retreats and by learning to walk the labyrinth. The idea and purpose for labyrinths appears to arise in Mesopotamia around 2000 BC, the earliest certain dating for labyrinth-like drawings. Found on Babylonian tablets, which illustrate the coiled intestines of sacrificial animals, analyzed by priests for divination, that is, to read the will of the gods. By 400 BC, a single-path square labyrinth appeared on Cretan coins, and by the Middle Ages, it was typically found in a circular shape, becoming a powerful symbol of mysticism. The outer circle represents the physical realm of linear time, while the inner circle is the timeless spiritual realm. The twisting, turning path is the apparent journey to deep within ourselves, tuning into God, the higher self, or ancestors, to obtain wisdom through an altered state of consciousness.
In a labyrinth, there is one way in and one way out. You don't have to think about it. Much like contemplative prayer, your mind is offline. It's passive. And I know my brain waves were in that alpha pattern because you feel the transition like that. And it's just a state that you, once you have experienced that, you know that state. The more you do it, the more you want to do it, the more compelling it is, and it becomes a driving force.
My name is Samuel Jacobson, but I was born as Samir Rahman Mahmoud in the city of Erbil in northern Iraq.
I also practiced Islam as a child.
I went to mosque, I read the Quran, I fasted during Ramadan.
Samuel and his family immigrated to Sweden as refugees to start a new life. But as he became a teenager in a new country, he felt lost. There was so much evil and injustice in the world. He decided that there was no God and stopped practicing Islam altogether. He packed his bags and moved to the USA and became a real estate agent in Los Angeles. He did quite well and had a comfortable life in Hollywood, but he had no peace.
I met a spiritual life coach. She was talking a lot about sort of the law of attraction. Within really just a couple weeks of working with her, I got a phone call from a client. He wanted me to sell a house for him, and the price of the house was $5 million.
After that, he practiced transcendental meditation and started doing yoga and hypnosis. And the more he went into New Age practices, it seemed that he was being more and more rewarded. He wore designer clothes, had a busy social life, flew in a private jet selling multi-million-dollar homes for and to celebrities.
In 2016, I was top realtor number 24 in the nation.
My coworkers at the real estate company, they said, "What is your marketing strategy?" I didn't have a marketing strategy. I said, I meditate, I get help from spirits.
A friend of mine had something called magic mushrooms. I don't know, I'd never done them before, and I said, let's try it. So I do magic mushrooms. Every time I did them, all of a sudden, I was transported into what I thought were past lives. One time I was a Roman soldier. One time I was a fisherman, and my family, we were all sitting in a boat and the boat sank. And that's why I have fear of water in this life. That's how they explain like how these things from past lives continue on to this life. One time I was like a 5-year-old during World War II, and I was running around in Germany. Like, I was like, if these things didn't happen, how could I see those things? They felt very, very real. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, I got a new talent, if you want to call it that. I started composing music. I don't even know how to read notes.
Big round of applause for the United States Synchronized Swimming Team.
And I was asked to compose music for the U.S. Olympic team for synchronized swimming, and my music was played in the middle of Times Square.
In December 2015, my mother, who was living in Sweden, she died of cancer. And when she died, my world just collapsed. I also became interested in knowing what happens after we die. I wanted to get in touch with her.
Samuel and his adult niece Vala were very close through the years. She lived in Sweden and struggled with depression, drug addiction, and a past of childhood trauma. She was in and out of rehab and had attempted suicide several times.
What's the purpose of life? Is this just suffering without knowing who I am? Why I could not have a normal life? So yes, I tried this time. I thought if I cut my hands, that will be, I know for sure, I will die. So I cut both my hands, and the blood's running so much. So when I woke up, I saw everything was white. I thought, wow, finally, I'm dead. Well, maybe I'm in heaven. But that was not in heaven, that was in hospital.
A friend of mine says there's something called ayahuasca. They promote it as whatever it is that you're seeking, you will find it.
And he told me, Vala, now I have found something called ayahuasca.
You have to come. This is something that I think is going to help both of us. We've been best friends all our lives. I saw how she suffered in Iraq, she suffered in Sweden. I said, this is something that was going to help her. So before the ceremony starts, the shaman asks every participant to say their intention. Why are you here? What is it that you want these spirits to help you with? Some people were like, I want to find the right person to marry. I want my company to do well, or I want to get pregnant. I asked for my mom, and Vala asked for the truth.
The truth about who I am, the truth about why I am here.
So the ceremony starts. You drink this little black drink. It tastes like, you can't describe it, as disgusting. And they give you a little bucket because it's called purging. Everyone throws up, and they say, you're purging away all the negative stuff in you, all the past. All of a sudden, there is a very, very clear communication with these spirits. The first thing they said, we have certain rules here in the spiritual world that you must trust us 100%. You cannot even imagine the amount of success, just everything we're going to give you. There's one obstacle, and that is your niece. Vala is a child of darkness, and you're a child of light. You may not understand, but if we're going to be able to help you, you have to separate from her.
It's been said that he was the most photographed man in history. Elvis Presley flashed into the public consciousness with the looks, talent, and charisma that tapped into a restless post-World War II culture. Elvis became the highest-paid actor in Hollywood and the best-selling solo artist in history. Though he didn't invent rock and roll, his unique style changed the world, almost overnight.
Good to me.
He was a money machine that ran relentlessly for 20 years. And then, he was gone. On August 16, 1977, 42-year-old Elvis Presley was found dead on his bathroom floor. Though the autopsy indicated heart failure, his death is now widely considered to be a result of his longtime prescription drug addiction. Near his body was a book called The Scientific Search for the Face of Jesus. It presents research about the Shroud of Turin, which many believe is the actual burial shroud Jesus Christ was buried in after he was crucified. I wondered why this book went out of print soon after Elvis died, And why was no online information available describing its contents? What really was in that book? Did Elvis find hope there? I had to find out. When I looked online, the only used copy for sale was on eBay for just $15,000. I also couldn't find a digital purchase option. Then, I looked and found 8 libraries in the US that had a copy. Unfortunately, the folks at Franciscan University in Steubenville, Ohio, were kind enough to allow me to drop by the St. John Paul II Library. The staff gave me access to their conference room, where I was finally able to hold and read the book that Elvis was reading just before he died. The first half of the book includes evidence that the Shroud of Turin was the authentic burial shroud of Jesus Christ. While there are more recent sources of information regarding the shroud, the last half of this book is still unique. There, the author speculates on how Jesus' soul could have left his body after dying on the cross and then later re-enter the shroud before his resurrection. To support his conclusions, the author presents examples of reported out-of-body journeys of the Catholic mystic Maria de Agreda and of the 20th century psychic Edgar Cayce. So who was Maria de Agreda? She was a Franciscan nun and author whose best-known work is titled The Mystical City of God, which she claimed to have channeled directly from the Virgin Mary. During the years 1621 to 1631, Maria reported hundreds of out-of-body experiences, referred to by the Catholic Church as bilocation. From her cloistered convent in Spain to the New World, visiting Indian tribes in parts of what is now Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona. The natives described mystical apparitions as a lady in blue who came from the sky to teach them. How did this happen? Like her countrywoman Teresa of Avila, Maria was inclined to a type of mystical prayer called the prayer of quiet, a form of mystical meditation which can lead to religious ecstasy or a trance state. It was during this meditation that she was said to bilocate and was also reportedly seen levitating. The most documented psychic of the 20th century, Edgar Cayce, also demonstrated signs and wonders through mystical meditation, which he admitted was self-hypnosis. As a young man, Cayce found that he could enter a self-imposed trance and apparently leave his body, sometimes to another state, to diagnose and prescribe cures for illnesses of people he'd never met.
He would read the body as though he were an X-ray machine.
From the early 1900s until his death in 1945, Edgar Cayce delivered more than 14,000 documented trance readings. Thousands of correspondents swore to the effectiveness of the treatments, all from a man with no medical training and only an 8th grade education. Adding to the mystery was the fact that he couldn't recall what he had channeled during a reading. So, with the help of his secretary, all of the sessions were written down while witnesses observed a reclined, self-hypnotized Cayce speaking in his own voice. No one seemed to question whether it was really Cayce speaking from his subconscious mind. Later, he began giving what he called life readings, which often gave people details about their past lives. Reincarnation was foreign to him. He was a Protestant Christian, and it went against everything he believed. He was troubled and said, "If ever the devil was going to play a trick on me, this would be it." Nevertheless, he chose to channel the esoteric doctrines anyway. In all, Casey, a man who knew nothing about Hinduism, Buddhism, or theosophy, would give 2,500 life readings devoted to metaphysics, with reincarnation as their central theme. Scattered through these life readings were details about the life of Jesus of Nazareth, later compiled in the book Edgar Cayce's Story of Jesus, written by Jeffrey First, who wrote the foreword to A Scientific Search for the Face of Jesus. What kind of Jesus did Edgar Cayce's trance readings represent? That Jesus was just a man who had 30 incarnations during his development in becoming the Christ. He was the first human being to overcome death by finally perfecting himself and becoming a way-shower to help mankind learn how to tap into their own Christ consciousness, their own inner divinity. Christ was presented not as a person, not the world's Messiah predicted in the Bible, but as a presence that filled Jesus. Cayce stated that Jesus was the greatest psychic of all time. Near the end of the book is a painting of the face of Jesus, which was said to incorporate details from the shroud, along with a description from Edgar Cayce's readings. In short, the research about the Shroud of Turin was creatively used in order to promote a New Age Jesus. This book was the last of hundreds of occult books that Elvis read beginning in 1964.
I went to Paramount Studio, brought him a couple of books, did his hair. Elvis was a voracious reader. We had a fabulous library that got bigger and bigger and bigger. Wherever he went on tour, 2 huge trunks were filled with his favorite books.
It all began with a little book, The Impersonal Life. His hairdresser, Larry Geller, who gave Elvis the books, stated that it became Elvis's Bible and that he gave away hundreds of copies. The book was channeled in 1914 by Joseph Benner, a Lutheran who believed it came directly from God.
In one of my other revelations called the Bible, very few comprehend my meaning. I have reserved for you thoughts and teachings, which I will give to you in secret. It is only when you can rise up in the realization of your divine immortality and can cast off all personal beliefs and opinions that you can free yourself. You need no mediator between you and me, for we are one already. I am, and you are, always have been, and always will be. I and you reincarnate into humanity. Not until you are able to enter into your Christ consciousness will you be worthy and qualified to know and commune with your fellows in the great brotherhood of the Spirit.
These teachings closely resemble those of Theosophy, which is a mixture of Gnosticism, Hinduism, and Buddhism, founded by Helena Blavatsky based on her interactions with highly evolved human beings, whom she referred to as Mahatmas, or the Great Brotherhood, allegedly gods in the afterlife. According to Larry Geller, Elvis believed he was being guided by these ascended masters, of which Jesus is just one among many. And according to a book by his former security guards, Elvis would sometimes read passages to his audiences from Blavatsky's book, The Voice of the Silence. It's a book that promotes Eastern Hindu meditation as a path to self-realization.
If thou wouldst reach the veil of bliss, disciple, close fast thy senses against this great dire heresy of separateness. Never did I not exist, nor you, nor will any one of us ever hereafter cease to be.
And we are part of God. The soul is part of God. The soul is God within. Are you taught? Go inside. God is in there? No. They say God is somewhere in heaven, behind the clouds somewhere. He's far away. And he's watching very carefully. If you make a mistake, you're going to go, where.
Another of Elvis's favorites was the autobiography of Paramahansa Yogananda, a Hindu guru who founded the Self-Realization Fellowship. In 1925, the LA Times described Yogananda as a Hindu invading the United States to bring God, preaching the essence of Christian doctrine. According to Larry Geller, Elvis tried to join this group, which also quotes the Bible and prays to Jesus and other gods, including Yogananda, who died in 1952.
Heavenly Father, Mother, friend, beloved God, Jesus Christ, Bhagavan Krishna, Mahavatar Babaji, Lahiri Mahashai, Swami Sri Yukteswar, our beloved Guru, Paramahansa Yoganandaji, saints of all religions, we bow to you all.
You should feel that they are with you as you meditate and pray, and that such brings their magnetism to you immediately.
Meanwhile, the 1960s hippie generation experimented with free love and psychedelic drugs. While the Beatles practiced and promoted Maharishi's transcendental meditation.
And you let your mind go, whatever it's going, doesn't matter what you're thinking about, just let it go. And then you just introduce the mantra or the vibration.
But when you reach that point, because it's beyond all experience, then it's down there, and that level is timeless, spaceless, so you can be there for 5 minutes and come out. You don't actually know how long you've been there.
While he was in India, John Lennon wrote to a fan, "Transcendental meditation is not opposed to any religion. It is based on the basic truths of all religions. The common denominator, actual experience of God." Ancient mysticism was rising. Perhaps the biggest influence during this era was the Second Vatican Council, known as Vatican II, launched in Rome with more than 2,000 Catholic bishops from around the world. Vatican II helped pave the way for interfaithism, promoting unity between the world's religions by sharing the Catholic Church's mystic treasures, that is, its contemplative traditions. The council documents declared, "Since the contemplative life belongs to the fullness of the Church's presence, let it be put into effect everywhere." The term contemplative life was historically related to various monastic orders of monks and nuns whose lifestyles are oriented towards ascetic practices and contemplative prayer, a form of mysticism.
We were asked by the Vatican to get involved in dialogue with Eastern meditation and with Eastern monasticism as the area in which Christianity had the most common basis.
Couldn't we put this rich Christian tradition that we've experienced as monastics into a form that would be available for contemporary people who go for these how-to methods?
The packaging, in a sense, was influenced by Eastern methods of meditation.
And it's also a place where, incidentally, we've met the New Age movement a great deal because we've kind of integrated some of their ideas.
According to Vatican II, they would play the main role in the evangelization of the world. And that's exactly what happened.
So I invite you now to close your eyes as the symbol of letting go of your own concerns for these 20 minutes. The centering prayer period is like taking a little vacation from ourselves and our concerns. We don't even think about God. We choose a symbol, which can be a word or the breath, perhaps an inward glance towards this presence. So the slightest movement towards this presence simply activates a presence that already exists. It's an exposure of our inmost being and the contents unknown to us of our unconscious that we're opening to God and to our deep self.
While he was promoting centering prayer, including at Protestant churches, Catholic monk Thomas Keating broke more ground for Vatican II's interfaith dialogue mandate. In 1984, he gathered a group of mystics from Buddhist, Hindu, Jewish, Islamic, Christian, and Native American shaman traditions to meditate together in silence and to search for common ground. After 20 years of annual meetings, the groundbreaking book The Common Heart was published. Some of their points of agreement included: ultimate reality cannot be limited by any name or concept. Spiritual authority is based in an experience of ultimate reality and comes from within. The individual soul is none other than the divine. We give authority to Holy Scriptures based upon our confidence in their ability to help others reach the greater authority, self-knowledge. These points of agreement are quite different from the major religions, whose teachings are very different from each other also.
You could say the fingers represent the 5 religions, and they're separate in their doctrines and dogmas, like the fingers are. But the fingers lead to the center of the palm, and the various religions, on their deepest level, lead to the center of reality, where they are one, but they're different expressions of that reality.
The inner circle of mystics find common ground based on shared mystical experiences. Christians call it contemplation or silence. For Hindus, samadhi or bliss. For Zen Buddhists, satori. Different terms for the same thing.
As Bergson points out, we have the ability to know every event, the infinitely infinite number of events going on in all realms, all universes, and right here, now. If we're aware of that all the time, all we could be is that, and shed the bodies and everything. But that's what we are. And so entering into this meditation, I think so many forms of meditation bring you to that place, ultimately. And it has different names, but it goes to the same place.
Jesuit author William Johnston wrote, "It is particularly relevant for our day, when science is exploring altered states of consciousness that are not unlike the states toward which the mystic points." Karl Rahner, foremost 20th century Jesuit theologian and engineer of Vatican II, emphatically predicted, "The Christian of the future will be a mystic, or he will not exist at all."